welcome to the BOPTMN podcast. My conversation today is with Chase Arsenault. Chase is an ultra runner. He's a younger guy. He's competed in many runs. We talk about a lot of those. And he placed 5th in the last man standing ultra race where he ran 100 miles. I'm looking forward to picking his brain and letting you know his thoughts, training thoughts, strategies. Hey, Chase.
Hey, Ben.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm, resting up for the race on Friday. I'm pretty excited for that.
I was going to ask you all packed? You all ready?
For the most part, yeah. I've got some laundry to do tomorrow, and then I'll throw the rest of it in my suitcase. But I finished up packing my equipment today, so
I can't even imagine what goes into that, and I do definitely want to get to that, but let's save that for a little later.
Yep.
So when I got to the race, last man standing, right? And I'm looking around at the crowd, and especially as it started thinning out, I'm thinking there's a lot of elite runners in that pack. I'm like, man, a lot of people look like really good runners, and you're definitely one of the ones that stood out.
Yeah.
and as we kept going, we'd see each other, and I could see your pace was pretty solid, and you didn't look like you were struggling. You look like an elite runner. And the other thing I started noticing too is there are a lot of older guys. Ed Clifford won the thing second time.
Yep.
And he's 57. You're what, 25?
25.
What are your thoughts when you look at kind of somebody 57 still doing this and still doing this at a high level? When you look kind of like your goals for ultra running, the old men are still doing it and competing against you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, last year it was pretty intimidating because I didn't really know what to expect. I was pretty new to ultra running, and I was still learning a lot, and I'm still learning. But this year when I'm there and I'm seeing these guys who are running that far, like Ed, Jason, and them, I'm thinking, wow, if they're doing what they're doing now, and I'm able to keep up with them, I could do pretty darn good in 10, 15, 20 years if I stick with it and keep doing the work that I'm doing. It's a lot of fun.
What's the potential? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Right.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm only like 2-3 years into ultra running at all, and I'm 47. And I'm like, man, if I started this at 25, who knows what I could do? Well, what's your how'd you get into running? Like, have you always been a runner?
I ran cross country in high school, and I kind of always told myself, yeah, I'll run a marathon one day, I'll get around to it eventually. And at the end of high school, I was kind of just sick of running, and I just stopped. And so I went to college for 4 years, didn't run at all. It'd been almost 5 years since I ran a mile. And one day I was just like, what am I doing? Like, I don't really have anything that I do, like,
right,
for myself. I'll go to the gym for an hour and lift weights, but and one day I just looked at myself in the mirror and was like, where's that kid who said he was going to run a marathon? He's 17 years old saying I'm going to run a marathon one day. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to do it. I'm going to start training now, see what I can do. Just run one marathon, just do something impossible that seems impossible right now. I was a lot bigger then. I was not in very good shape at all. So I started running, and I couldn't even do a mile when I started. And, over the course of a few weeks, I built up to 3 miles, and then to 6 miles, and then to 8 miles. And, I sort of just kept with it and kept going. And COVID happened. My marathon was the Providence Marathon, and it got canceled. I was like, well, I'm having a lot of fun still. I'm just going to stick with it and keep running for now. And I'll run that marathon eventually, but I'm in really good shape right now, and I'm just going to stick with it. And as restrictions were starting to get lifted a little bit, I started trying to find a race that I could run anything. And I found the 6-hour race, and I said, well, maybe I'll give it a shot. And, I had read Goggins' book during my training, and I'm sure you've heard of Goggins.
I was reading the book probably about the same time you were. I say reading, I was listening to the audiobook. But
Yep. And, when I was reading the book, I was a few chapters into the book, and I had listened to him on Joe Rogan's podcast too. And I was like, well, if this guy had so many things stacked against him and he accomplished so much, then why am I selling myself short in only doing a marathon? I could probably do more. So, I went to that 6-hour race, and it went terribly. I had no idea what I was doing. I went out way too fast. I did 20 miles in the first 3 hours. And then the last 3 hours, I only got about 6 miles done. So I did get the marathon.
what
But
was your longest run leading up into that, would you say?
25 miles.
Oh, so close to a marathon.
Yeah. But after that race, that 6-hour race, the same race director has a 9-hour race, which was the next month. And I was talking to him after the race. I was, I'm a little disappointed with how it went today. I thought I would do better. I fell apart. And he was like, you're gonna catch the bug. You're gonna get addicted to this. And I went home that day, and I was talking to my dad and my sister and my mom. I was like, I'm going to do the 9-hour one next month, and I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to do better. And I went to that 9-hour race the next month, and I had never run 30 miles before. My furthest run was that 6-hour race the previous month. I go to that 9-hour race, and I ran 51.8 miles. And I felt superhuman after that. I was stunned at what I was able to do with my body. And I had started training about 11 months into training, and I did that. And I said to myself after that day, next year, I got to go and try and do 100 miles.
So before we get
the table,
before we get there, so the last 6 hours, was it the last 6 hours or last 6 miles there on the first race? Was that the Enchanted Forest? I kind of have a list of some of your runs from your ultra list. How bad were those? How rough were those? Like, what was that like? What did you have to push through?
I couldn't even run. I was cramping up. I was running too fast, too early. I wasn't taking in enough calories, drinking enough water. I had no idea what I was doing. And so it was just a lot of walking. And when I would finish a lap on the course, I would, lay down in the trunk of my dad's car. And
so how's that race work? It's just a loop? How big's a loop?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact distance for the loop. It's around 2 miles, somewhere around there. Yeah, and you just go and you run at your own pace. You just keep going until the 6 hours is up,
Right.
and that every completed lap counts to your distance.
So I know with so I used to do Ironman. It was kind of how I was doing Ironman, and I'm like, I got to get better at running. Running is where I'd fall apart, and then that's how I got into ultras. Like trying to get past the marathon. I'm like, to train for a marathon, I need to run, especially a marathon after doing the swim and the bike.
Oh yeah,
I need to be better in shape. I have to get so I started pushing my distances more and more. And next thing I know, I'm like, man, I really like this pushing distance thing. So you went from a 6 hour in 1 month, went to a 9 hour. And the reason I brought up Ironman is I know the greatest predictor of success in Ironman is experience. If you look at how many races they've done, you know that they're going to do better. What'd you do from that in 1 month, from 6 hours to 9 hours, to go from 26 to, what'd you say, 50? The first time you run a marathon, you're running 50 miles, basically. Well, I guess your second. What happened? What changed for you in that month?
I started training at slower paces. And I, still continue doing the same mileage. And I realized that in order to avoid cramping up the way I did, I was going to have to eat and drink more. And I went into that race and I was religiously getting calories in me, keeping hydrated. And when I got to 30 miles and I realized how well I was doing, and other runners in the race, I'm lapping other runners and they're like, "Hey, you've got a real shot at 50 miles today." I'm like, no way. That's crazy. And then I actually did it. And, it was really cool at that race. I come through with about like 18 or 20 minutes, somewhere around there left. And I had to do one more lap to get to the over 50 miles. And, that lap I finished got me to about 49.9 miles or somewhere around there. So everyone's like, "What's he need? What's he need? Grab him a Gatorade, get him what he needs. He's got to go back on another. He's got to get the 50." And then when I came through finishing the lap, they were ringing cowbells and everyone was clapping. It was really cool. Everyone was lifting me up at that race. They're looking out for me.
That's pretty awesome. I've done marathons, and I've thought about other races but everybody gets spread out. I never really considered these hour races actually until you're just talking about now that actually what I like about the backyards, you're all starting together, but
yeah,
where you're all kind of doing loops and you kind of know where people are at.
Yeah.
And people are pushing you on. That's a cool format.
Yeah. It's very cool race. That race director has a series of like, I think 5 or 6 ultras. And I try to do a few of them every year. They're a lot of fun. He's got a really good, tight-knit community of runners. So everyone, for the most part, knows each other. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I just want to keep going through some of your races here. If you want to give me some of your thoughts. So the next one I have on the list, Mohawk Mountain. That's an 8-hour. Is that part of that same group of, and that's the next year, 21?
The Mohawk Mountain that's not the same race or the same race director. That was just something after I did the 9-hour race. I still had the bug. I wanted to keep running races. And so I went and did that 8-hour, and it was, that was more of power hiking the whole day because it was on a ski slope. It was, I think, 575 feet of elevation gain, and it was a 1.1 mile loop, if I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I got to around 25 miles at that, but that was really hard because where I live, there aren't too many hills. So I don't have access to train on a hill.
Let alone a mountain.
Yeah. And so it was a grind. And after I did the first lap, I got to the bottom of the mountain and my legs were hurting already. And then I went and sat down to grab some calories from my tent. And my dad was sitting there, and I was like, "This is the hardest thing I've ever done. This is a beast." But ended up doing pretty well at that. I think I came in like 5th place or something like that. But that one was pretty cool.
I can't imagine that. I would think the down would almost be the worst on that, where your thighs are just shot. No,
I know a lot of people don't like running downhill. It blows out their quads, but I love the downhill. I just sort of let my lanky body just fly down the hills and just go.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So next is a 50 mile at Pineland. So
yep.
Is that basically the same loop that we did in the backyard?
Part of it is on that loop. The other part is across the street. And that race I did, I think that was May of 21, I believe. Yeah,
it was.
My sister and I drove up to Maine for the weekend, and she was crewing for me at that. That race started at 6 a.m. and it was raining. So, it was pretty terrible at the start running in the rain. And the wet shoes, I was getting blisters on my feet, and I had some pretty gnarly blisters. But that one was a big learning experience for me. I went out way too fast. I was way ahead of everyone in the race. I ended up getting passed by a couple runners towards the end, but something that I've realized that happens to me in every race, and this is the first race that I was conscious of it, was when I get really tired and I've been running a long time and I start hurting, I stop eating. And I don't mean to, but my stomach just like doesn't want food while I'm running, and I don't understand it. And I don't know if other people are like that, but I got to like 38 miles in that race, and I was struggling, and I got to an aid station, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to run another 12 miles. And I stopped there for a little bit and talked to the people at the aid station. I just sat there eating some wheat thins, and it brought me back to life. And I was like, you know what? I need to remember this for next time to eat more.
I think that's a common thing, actually, to be honest with you, stomach distress or just losing the want to get down food. I know I struggled, at least in the backyard ultra with you, just digesting food, just swallowing food just wasn't enjoyable anymore.
Yeah.
For me, my plan was, well, I had tailwind, and I'm like, I can go to just liquid calories, and just kind of, even though I don't want to digest anything, and usually I do find it comes back to me as I'm pushing, as I keep going, like I get past it. But yeah, there's definitely, you're not alone in that, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Something I do now, which is kind of bizarre, and you wouldn't think like in an event like this that you'd see someone consuming this, but I drink Pepsi during race. I drink a lot of Pepsi. And I swear by Pepsi. I think it's helped me a lot in races, and maybe it doesn't work for other people, but
I think that's another common thing. I know a lot of aid stations and marathons that I've run have, or even the Ironman stuff, they have Coke, usually Coke.
Yeah.
I mean, same kind of thing. And it's usually flat. I think they shake it and get the bubbles out. I don't know if you do the bubbles, but I mean, it's just straight calories, right? I mean, it's just,
yeah.
All right. So then you go to Forbidden Forest 100. So this is your first 100 race, oh no, wait, it's a 30-hour race, but you ended up doing 100 miles.
Yep.
That's
that was
another month. You're doing a lot of tight back-to-back races, I'm noticing. We'll get to that. But so Forbidden Forest.
Yeah, that was my first 100-mile attempt, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get to 100 and keep going or what was going to happen, but I went out there, and I did well during the day. I was on track to get to 100 and doing good, and then the nighttime hit, and that was my first time running through the night in a race, and that's when things got really tough for me. I learned a lot at that helps me now at when I go to last man standing. But I really had a lot of trouble at that. I thought my legs were done, and I didn't know how I was going to get the last 30 miles done when it's like 3 or 4 a.m. and I had 30 more miles to get to 100 miles, and I ended up walking for a long time in that race. And then I don't know what happened, but eventually I was like, let's just ease back into running again. Let's see what we can do, because it's doing all this walking it's just taking too long, and I wanted to hurry up and get to 100. And that was really special. Once I finally got there, my mom and dad were there, and they got to watch me finish, and my sister too. So it was really special having my family there, and I'll never forget the first time crossing the finish line, getting to 100.
I mean, it's crazy. You're almost within a year of saying a marathon's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you just crossed 100.
Yeah. And
That's
and that
go ahead.
that feeling when you get to 100, and it never gets old when you cross that finish line and you're done. It's a really cool feeling, and it's emotional. There's a lot going on in your head. You're feeling so many emotions when you get to that finish line, because you just did something crazy for a whole day. And then every time I look back on the race right after I finish it, it was only one day. I did this in one day, but it felt like it took so much longer. Maybe that's just a little bit of the sleep deprivation. I don't know.
I'm sure. I mean, if you think about the percentage of people that, not the percentage that could do 100, because there's a lot of people that could do 100 and have no idea that they can, but
Yep.
the percentage of people that of humans on Earth that have actually run 100 miles, I mean, you're well under 0.1 of 1%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So what have you really ramped up your mileage in training, or where you're going back to back so much? You're just like, how are you getting to 100 at that point?
My trainings, I kind of play it by ear. I don't have really a set schedule. I don't have a coach. I go by feel. Monday through Thursday, I like to try and get out twice a day, and I'll do like 10 in the morning and 4 to 6 miles in the afternoon. And maybe I'll try and sneak in 2 lifts during the week. Then Friday I'll do like an easy, like 8 to 10. And then Saturdays, I always do a long run, and then recovery run on Sunday. But I pretty much run just about every single day, unless I'm gearing up for a race, which I'd be tapering. I'll run 6 days a week in the 2 weeks leading up to a race.
I mean, you're pretty much so far running a race every month.
Yeah.
You're tapering, run a race, then you got to recover, then 2 weeks taper, and you're back in another race. It's a little crazy.
Yeah,
must be nice to be young.
Yeah.
So then you do another 100 one, the 24-hour Centurion. That's in October.
Yep. That was a month after I did Last Man Standing last year. So that race was again at Roosevelt Forest, the same race director as the 6-hour and the 9-hour race. And that was the first running of that race. And so I figured I'd sign up and see if I could get to 124 hours at it. And I did. But that was a lot of fun. And that's where my friend who I was with at Last Man Standing this year sort of caught the running bug. He came down to crew for me at that. He ran the last, I think, 19 miles with me. And he was a big help at that, getting me to 100. But that one was a lot of fun.
So then you do a JFK 50 mile.
Yep.
And then
JFK.
Go ahead.
JFK 50 mile is it's a pretty cool race. That was the first time I ever ran against professionals in an ultra, and it was crazy. They run like 6-minute miles for 50 miles. It's incredible what they could do. I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah. Have you done like a marathon, like just to see how fast you can do a marathon?
Yeah, I did a marathon at the in May of this year. And I did a 3:23, but I feel like I didn't do my best at that. I had COVID 3 weeks before it, and I really struggled. I was not 100% for weeks. But 3:23 is still a really good time.
Yeah, it is.
I'm happy with it, but I think if I did it again, I could do better.
Do you enjoy that? So for me, I train basically in zone 2. I run an easy heart rate. I used to train more marathon stuff when I was doing Ironman, trying to push pace. And since I've kind of switched more to focusing on longer distance, like I just enjoy the workouts more. I enjoy the running more. I like, running at a slow pace for long distances. It's just more enjoyable for me. I'll still run a marathon here or there, but I don't enjoy those races like I do back ultras. Is that kind of where you lie too, or?
Yeah, I have a lot more fun in ultras than running races like that. I was more running the marathon to get an idea of what I could run in a marathon, but also it was a long run for me. It was training for other races.
Yeah. So then you do a 6-hour Enchanted. Now we're into 2022 finally.
Yep.
You've packed a lot in a couple of years. So
yeah, I did.
So Enchanted, that's the same one. That's the one you did the first time, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing you did a little better the second time around.
The second time I did it was in 2021, and I came in second. I ran 39 miles. This year, when I ran it, I got to 20 miles and had to drop out. I was feeling a little dizzy, and that was right when I had COVID. That was a couple days after I started testing negative. I was back out running that race, and I had lost some training time, and I was going out for runs the week of the race, and my heart was pounding in my heart or in my chest, and I was going for easy 4-mile runs at a pace that normally should be very relaxed for me, and I'm out of breath. So I was struggling then, and I was worried going into that race, and I still got to 20 miles, which is really good, but if I was 100%, I could have done a lot better.
Yeah, I always think about any of these long distance runs that we're going to go into. There's so many things that can go wrong. So many things could happen, and then you're starting it with on the backside of COVID.
Yeah,
probably not your smartest choice.
No.
But then, what? 2 weeks later, almost 3 weeks later, you're doing the Fit Rock Trail. Is that right? 50K.
I think that was in March.
Yep. So end of April. Yep. Were you recovered from COVID by then?
That was before I had COVID. The Fit Rock. That was sort of just like a training run for me. I ran a half marathon 2 weeks prior, and then that Fit Rock, I was sort of just showing up, and I wasn't gonna go all in at this race. It was a 50K. I was sort of just going out there and getting 50K mileage in, and I just went out there and took it easy and had some fun and relaxed. And it was blistering cold that day. There was snow on the ground at the start, and it was probably like 15 degrees out.
Wow.
So it was a tough one.
I was about to give you crap because I live here in Maine. I'm like, okay, what's blistering cold for you? Okay, 13 is blistering cold. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Then Forbidden Forest, 30-hour, and you get 103 miles. That's in June.
Yep. Second time running that race. And I was a little nervous because I had a couple of tough races leading up to that where I didn't even get to. I did the 6 hour. It didn't go so well. I wasn't feeling too confident after I ran the marathon. And then I showed up to that race, and I was very nervous, and I know what I'm capable of. I've done 100 miles before, but I was pretty scared there that I wasn't going to do what I know I can. That I didn't have, my mojo back, but, and I did struggle at that race. It was very hot out. I remember at one point,
end of July.
Yeah. At one point I sat down in chair at my camp, and I was like 37 miles in, somewhere around there, and my leg was just twitching on its own. I was cramping up, and I was like, oh no, how am I going to do this? And I ended up pushing through. It was a mental struggle because I lost my legs and my body early in that race, and I had to push through all of that mentally that day, and that was really tough.
Is it just me, or is some of the ones you push through the most some of the most rewarding though? I mean, you get 100
Yeah,
miles and it wasn't going well. I mean, that's got to
yeah,
be pretty cool.
yeah. I was really proud of that one. It was, I think that's my slowest 100 mile that I have run was that day in June this year. But I was so proud that I was able to get through that and get to the finish. It was, I really didn't think I was going to make it there during the day on the first day of that race, and I somehow got there.
So then you have a 6-hour soapstone, and
Yep. That was a training run for me. I was doubling up on long runs that week. So the 7 days leading up to that race, I ran 100 miles combined. And the day before the race, I did a 20-mile long run. And then I wanted to have, tired legs for that soapstone. And then I was just going to run the 6 hours and, treat it as a back-to-back long run on tired legs. And I knew it was going to be a lot of climbing up and down hills, a lot of elevation gain. And it was. And yeah, I got to like 17 or 18 miles at that. I was happy with it. That was just practice for me. I wasn't going out there to compete and go all in on it, and just have some fun and get some miles in.
yeah. JT and I, who I ran the race with you, we talk a lot about, or I guess maybe we've been running on tired legs. I mean, that's definitely like the one thing that we both kind of have agreed on, that's what gets you there. Like we talk a lot about doing 30-20s. We try to do like on a weekend to do a 30 and then a 20 back to back, just to get those tired legs. And then this past year, I've just put on a ton of miles. I'm just going to do as many miles as possible and see what happens, which I don't think was the best strategy. I ended up doing like 3,500 miles. I'd do like 4 marathons a week, but I was just so beat down, and I ended up injuring myself the month leading into Last Man Standing. And, wasn't even feeling good going into it. Like, am I going to be healed enough going into the race? And I know JT was he had the same kind of goals, but he was more like 25. He was 1,000 miles behind me, but I feel like his body was handling everything much better. He was doing smarter miles than I was, where I was just grinding. What are your thoughts? Like, where do you land on that? And well, we're into Last Man Standing basically now.
Yep.
Like, how are you trying to prepare for a race like that?
Well, I try to pack on as many miles as I can. I'm trying to do 80 to 100-mile weeks at my peak. And I love doing 2-a-days, because that second run, every time you go out for your second run of the day, do 10 in the morning and go for that second run. Don't worry about pacing your second run. Just go out there and move. Just get moving. Don't worry if you have to stop and walk. Don't worry about it, any of that. Just go do it. Force your legs to do that run. Yeah, that has worked well for me. And I'll try and vary how I do my long runs. Like sometimes I'll just go for like a 30-mile long run, and then the next day I'll do maybe 6 miles super easy, or some weekends I will do back-to-back long runs. But I try not to do back-to-back long runs 2 weeks in a row, because your legs need a rest from that. But I try to make sure that I'm not overtraining, and I have no idea if I am or not. I like to think hopefully I'm not. But I'm making it up on the fly. I'm just getting ideas in my head and just going and doing them.
I think that's a good strategy, to be honest with you. And the overtraining thing, I've wondered, is it like pushing yourself up to the point of, how else do you know you've overtrained until you're injured? And then it's like, oh, now I'm overtrained. But then again, a year ago doing 50-mile weeks was about what my body could handle. And I was getting injured. Well, this year I was doing 100-mile weeks every other week, handling it no problem. So it's I don't know how you know that, to be honest with you. I mean, I was doing heart rate variability in the morning, trying to track my recovery, but then again, we're trying to run on tired legs. We're trying to run when our body is tired purposely. So my heart rate variability is telling me, oh, you haven't got enough recovery. Well, yeah, I know. I did that on purpose. So to me, that's one of the biggest mysteries in the stuff we're doing, because we're trying to push our bodies to the limits, literally.
Yeah, probably depends on the person too. Like something that works for me might not work for you. Something that works for you might not work for me.
Right. And I look at, especially with where you are age-wise, and I look at our bodies adapt to things really quickly. My daughter just had a knee injury that she's been dealing with for years, and she did physical therapy for 2 weeks, and her body adapted. Now her knee issues are gone, right? We're running these miles, our bodies are adapting to handle these miles, so then we can do more. So yeah, it's such a mystery.
Yeah.
So you're going into Last Man Standing this year.
Yep.
How confident are you going into it? What's your strategy going in? Not, because obviously we have strategies that we think we're going to do that then fall apart. But what are you thinking going into that race?
So because I had Moab coming up,
I knew you're gonna tell me this is just a training run for you.
Yeah.
I knew it. Okay.
My goal for Last Man Standing was to get to 100 miles and then drop. And so that's what I went out and did. In this specific race this year, I don't know what it was, but for some reason it was just the right day for me, and everything went smoothly aside from my headlamp issues that I had during the race. But my mind, my body, everything was perfect. I couldn't have asked for a better run that day. My body held up really well. And I found that at every point in ultras that I've run, there's that one defining moment where you want to quit. At every single race I've run, I have said, why not just drop out now? Just quit. And I didn't have that moment at Last Man Standing this year. I felt really good, and I just felt like I could keep going and keep going. And I was perfectly fine at that race. I had some stomach issues, but I was still able to keep putting down Pepsi. So I was able to, keep going without cramping up. So went really well.
We did have perfect weather, right? Literally couldn't have been better.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Okay, so what strategies do you employ to just actually, let me ask you this question first, because it's something JT and I have debated. What do you think's harder for somebody to run their first marathon or run their first 100 miles in a straight 100-mile race or in a Last Man Standing format? What's the easier place to do your first 100?
Straight 100 miles, probably.
I think so too. I mean, it seems counterintuitive that like the Backyard Ultra would be a harder place. And I have my thoughts on that, but why do you think that? Why do you answer that way?
Well, you could run at your own pace, right? And as your body breaks down over a race, you're not able to go as fast as you were at the beginning. And so I just, especially like if you've never done 100 before, you're sort of forced to do it in under 24 hours at Last Man Standing, and forced to do 4.2 miles an hour, where, maybe your pace per hour would be better, at like 3 miles an hour. You could do it in, like 30 something hours instead. The Last Man Standing, it's tough because that 4 hours, you know, it's easy at the start and it feels so easy, but then once it's grind time, once, you know, the sun goes down, the legs start hurting, that's, you know, it's a bit more of a struggle to complete the laps then.
Yeah, I think the way that format is, you're constantly aware of how you're doing too. So
Yeah.
every lap you're like, oh, I have 2 minutes less than I did last lap, and you just know where your body stands the whole time, and you can't have a bad lap. I would think in
Yeah.
in a 100-mile race, you can zone out and get 20 miles in, and because you're just in a zone where you can't do that in this race because you got to stop, you got to chunk up, and then you got to
Yep.
start your pace again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think if it was you're trying to do your first marathon, I think Last Man Standing is a much better place to do a first marathon.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah. Which I think I was shocked at how many people kind of like are at the race that we did, the Last Man Standing, that were kind of going for those 100, first marathon, first 50K, et cetera, kind of distances.
Yep.
Which is kind of cool that there's that many people interested, because
Yeah.
they're all catching the bug that you and I have caught.
Yeah.
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 So what other strategies are you doing in the race? So let me ask you first, I guess, which is probably the thing I'm most interested in. I was starting up every lap, I was the stiffest runner, as we got down, past 50 miles or something. That first mile, I seemed to struggle more than everybody else around me. What are you doing in between laps in your rest?
So I would try to finish every lap my goal was 48 to 52 minutes, somewhere in that 4-minute range every lap, and then get off your feet, sit down, stretch, take in calories, drink electrolytes, and, use a massage gun on your legs if, you need it. And just, relax. Because you're on your feet the whole time on the trail, and I think it's better to just give yourself a few minutes of rest for your legs. And maybe it works differently for some other people. And I know I've read about other Last Man Standing races where people would run like 40-minute laps and then take like a 15-minute nap, and then with 5 minutes left, grab some calories quick and get back to the line. But I don't even think my legs could run that fast, after running like 80 miles. I don't know if I could do a 40-minute lap on that course.
Especially that course, right?
Yeah.
And I know I couldn't push that pace. Like that's not an option for me.
Yeah.
But so you just you're just sitting there and you're just coming back to the line cold, like nothing to warm back up?
No, nothing.
Nice.
Maybe I'll stretch a little bit, but yeah.
I've been debating on. I had very much the same strategy as what you're talking about. For me, it was like, especially towards the end, as we're getting probably, 60 miles on, is like getting my heart rate back down, just relaxing, trying to get things back down. And then, I had my son, who's a physical therapist. I always pick his brain on this stuff, but I mean, who really has great ideas for this? But yeah, he's like, put your legs up on a foam roller, so they're on your Achilles. And he's like, and just move your feet, so then you'll stretch your hamstrings and loosen up your Achilles at the same time. Which I've always had. If there's one thing I get, is like tight hamstrings, and I had no issues whatsoever with that. But like I said, I'd start the line and I'd be stiff. I'm debating on bringing like a bike, like just to pedal, and nothing pedaling hard, just enough to stay loose. I don't know if that'd be a good strategy or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
So then, what about your race strategy? I mean, I actually jotted down your times, and just like you said, you're between 48 and 52 minutes all the way up until like your last 4 or so laps.
Yep.
So how were you? So I know you're walking hills because I saw you.
Yep.
Any other strategies on the course?
Not really. No, walk the uphills, and you could catch up on your on the downhills and hammer the downhills a little bit, but yeah, walk those hills, and um, some people probably don't realize how much you can walk and complete the lap in the time, and it's sort of a nifty little strategy to work in as much walking as you can to save your legs.
Right. On those steeper downhills, you were running those?
That one really steep one, like halfway through the loop, I was not running that. That was just that one was so steep that I would have fallen down.
Did you see, what are your thoughts on I can't remember his name, the guy that came in second? He was going backwards down them.
Yeah, I saw that, and I've never heard of that.
I had never seen it, and I saw it, and I'm like, that seems like it makes a lot of sense. But I'm like, there's no way I'm trying that on a race,
Yeah.
first time out. But
Yeah.
since then, I've gone to a couple steep hills around my house, and it feels nice. Like,
Yeah.
besides having to look over your shoulder and tripping, I think.
Yeah. I'm just a little afraid of going backwards down a hill in a race, and I'm not a very graceful person. I'm afraid I'd fall down and get hurt, and my race would end there.
Yeah, for me, the thing that it was a weird race for me. So like I've done some longer distance. I've tried for 100 a couple times, all pretty much solo, not in races like you've done. Yeah. And I have very much the same thing as you. I never had, it was just like a perfect race. Everything went really well.
Yeah.
Actually, the thing that, if anything, that took me out was I was so content with everything. I went into the thing like I might go 2 laps and my knee's acting up and I'm done. I mean, I really didn't expect to go. I was hoping to go far, and then it was a lot of fun. And I never really had any really big setbacks, no really dark moments. Have moments where I don't feel like talking.
Yeah.
But the only thing that was really uncomfortable was actually that downhill. Like, and it was, your toes kind of hitting the front of your shoes.
Yeah.
And as you get more tired, as your legs, your technique's a little bit worse, so you're putting a little more pressure on your toes. My toenails definitely paid the price, and they're still. Well, one of them's gone, no longer here with us.
That happens.
And my thighs, I'm like, oh, I need to do more squats. But it really went well, the whole thing, and actually that I was so content. So my JT and I were running together. He had dropped out, and I'm like, man, this day just went perfect. I felt bad having my family wait around and wait for me longer, and I'm like, I'm good with. It was the first time I've ever, like, of all the things I was kind of prepping for that could take me out of the race, being content was never one I thought that I'd ever have to deal with. But it's a good one to have to deal with. So what do you think? How far, if you kept pushing? Now you obviously have Moab.
Yep.
Any idea where you think you could have got to?
I think I could have done. I think Ed went another 6 hours or so after the race ended. I think I definitely would have pushed him past that 30 hours that he got to. I really don't know, when my legs would have given. I couldn't go much faster than I was going at the end, but my body was giving me what I needed to finish in under the hour. So I could have just kept going for no idea how long. I really don't know.
Yeah. JT and I have been toying with the idea since the race. We've talked about it, and like, would it be a good strategy? Like the first 30 miles, the rest, I don't really need the rest. I'm just grabbing calories, and just going right back, taking a leak, and maybe even going intentionally even slower, walking more, maybe walking the last mile or so, or trying to just come in, have enough time, just grab your stuff and get back out. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean that's probably a good strategy. You know, as long as you're comfortable, right? You know, you want to be as comfortable as you can for as long as you can in that sort of race, because once the pain starts creeping in, it gets really hard, and it you know, you start struggling. And um yeah, but I like my strategy of that 48 to 52 minute. That's sort of what I did the first year at this. That's what I did this year, and it just works. And you know, I don't want to try and fix something that isn't broken. So, you know, I'm already signed up for next year. I'm going to do the same thing that I did this year. You know, I probably won't change a thing.
So what were your headlamp issues?
Uh,
And how well prepared were you for it?
yeah. So, I'm wearing my headlamp on a lap, and I'm running with my buddy who was there with me, Nick. And I have a Petzl headlamp, and he has like the same kind of headlamp. And you know, it'd been like maybe 4 or 5 hours of wearing headlamps, and my headlamp blinks when it's getting low on battery. And a couple times I thought I saw it blinking. You know, the light will just flash on and off 3 times and then stop. And I went, "Hey, was that my headlamp blinking?" And he goes, "No, I think that's just your head bobbing because we're going downhill right now." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And when I got back to camp, I didn't charge the headlamp or anything or switch headlamps.
Oh
I just
no.
I grabbed my phone, and then I'm out on the trail, and we're about a mile into that lap, and the headlamp just goes dark. I went, "Oh, oh no." And I should have known better, but you know, luckily I had my phone and it had a flashlight on it, so I was able to just use that for the lap. And then I switched over to my other headlamp. I just don't like using that other headlamp because it's bigger and it's uncomfortable to wear on your head. So I wrap it around my hand, just use it like that. But that's what I did for the rest of the night. And it turns out that headlamp that went dead on the trail there, I think it's broken, because I haven't been able to charge it since then or get the light to turn on. So probably going to have to throw that out.
So you ran. I think behind me, there's a picture of us all lined up in the dark.
Yep.
And I noticed everybody had a headlamp on. I know they're telling everybody, they're checking for headlamps and stuff. You had yours in your hand.
Maybe not in that picture. There were 2 times I forgot to carry the headlamp to the start line. And there was a panic, you know, when the lap starts and I go to turn my headlamp back on, and I went, "Oh, I don't have a headlamp to turn on." And so it was a mad dash over to my tent, and my buddy Nick was sleeping on the inflatable couch because he had dropped out of the race. And you know, I woke him up and go, "Where's my headlamp? I need my headlamp. I gotta go. The lap started. Where's the headlamp?" Freaking out. And I woke him up for no reason because I found the headlamp just sitting on the cooler. Yeah, but
Yeah, I noticed
that happened twice.
Really?
Yeah.
It's amazing how loopy. I mean, I don't know how. I'm one that doesn't do well without sleep. I've never, staying up overnight, driving at night. I'm not great at that. I definitely get loopy. There was a couple times where, like, there was one time in the race, I came up the hill, the corners in front of me. I know the signs are usually on the left to tell you to go to the right. And I was turned, like, I'm looking at the sign. I'm like, I can't figure out which direction to go. What a simple sign. It's just an arrow pointing.
Yeah.
But I had that moment where I'm like, wow, my brain is really not working very well at the moment.
Yeah.
And obviously the headlamp stuff, I think, sounds kind of similar. You're in such a zone. And
yeah. I don't know what I was thinking.
I saw Ed has a belt lamp and a headlamp.
Yep.
Which I'm like, oh, that might not be a bad strategy.
Yeah, probably helps you see right in front of your feet a little better.
I would think so. That's the one thing I feel like I left up to there was a lot left to chance with my vision at night. You know, just
Yeah.
hoping every foot lands in not on a rock.
Yeah.
You know, or not catching a root. Luckily, there isn't a ton of roots on that course, but I found the one that tripped me pretty good. But yeah, I think that might be a good strategy, having the multiple lights.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. I know my headlamps were so bright that, you know, I didn't really need another. I wouldn't need a second headlamp because they were lit up everything in front of me. I could see for like 50 feet.
Yeah, we ran into Jason Begonia, I think a lap or two before he ended, but his headlamp was going out, and he's like, "Can I run with you guys?" So we ran him in. He ran between us. We ran him in, and like coming around the last bend, he flipped it on to look like he had his headlamp working. You know,
yeah.
There's a lot of logistics that go into these races. You know, into just I don't know. Do you wear a Garmin or anything like that? Are you tracking yourself?
Yeah, I have a Garmin on.
Does your battery last the whole time?
Yeah, I have the Enduro.
Oh, nice.
And it has like a 3-day battery or something like that. I don't know. I've never killed the battery on this, and I've used it in a couple races where I've gone a day. So
nice. Yeah, I don't have mine. Doesn't last that long. I had to do a lap with a battery recovery, but I kept the battery recover me so with a charging wire just in case my headlamp. You know, I could always plug it in and then just I don't know how well that would logistically work. So you get to 100.
Yep.
You happy with everything, obviously, because and now trying to think if there's any other strategy. I mean, nutrition wise, did everything go as planned? What is your kind of nutrition plan? Anything specific? Did you get sick of eating? Did you get sick of eating in that race?
No, my stomach got a little upset and I threw up in my mouth. And I just couldn't eat anymore, but I was still able to put down soda, so I was doing fine. But earlier on, I was eating cookies, pickles, peanut butter sandwiches, applesauce. I get those squeezable applesauces, and I just use those because I sort of hate the gels. I just don't like the taste of them. And the applesauce, I could just keep putting back, and I'll get like a couple flavors of that, some with like cinnamon in it. And
do you eat it all while you're on the run?
Sometimes while I'm running, but for the most part, I would eat it while I'm back at the camp. Yeah.
And you wear a vest. Did you wear a vest pretty much the whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah.
You don't feel like it gets you too hot?
No. I've always worn that in all the ultras that I've run, and I think that one feels like it's like part of my shirt. I don't even notice it. It doesn't bounce around or anything, and it stays pretty high on my back. But I like not carrying things in my hands, which is why I hated having the headlamp in my hand later. But I like having empty hands so I could, you know.
I don't know how anybody runs with like the water bottle in their hands.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would have to run with one in each hand at least to be balanced.
Yeah.
But I don't know how people do that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I have no idea how they're comfortable, because I don't like it.
I did have on my pack. So at night I put on the backpack, and this is the first time I'd had the little straws that stick up out of like the and that was actually really nice to just to be able to take a quick sip instead of pulling it out and taking a drink and putting it back.
Yeah.
I definitely really like that.
Yeah.
I think personally, nutrition wise, it's more about variety and textures, like different flavors, different textures, just having different, having the same like gels. Just I'm with you. I can do gels for a little while, then I get really sick of them.
Yeah.
But just having, and I did not have enough variety. I would just I look at the things I had and like, I don't want any of that. And my wife and kids went to a Greek restaurant in Auburn, and they came back and they're telling us about how good the restaurant was, and I'm like, oh, that Euro sounds really good right now. I could really go for that. You didn't bring me anything, but like I think the next time I do it, I'm just gonna have just a variety of fruits and just all kinds of different things.
Yeah, something that was pretty awesome that they had at the race was the soup at night. I had the soup, and it's nice and warm and salty, and
I sucked down that broth. I didn't actually like chew most of it. The broth just hit the spot for sure.
Yeah.
And then I was so looking forward to the breakfast sandwich. I don't know if you noticed, they announced they were going to do breakfast sandwiches in the morning.
Yep.
And then morning comes and there's no breakfast sandwiches out. And I went to my parents. My parents were there in the morning. I'm like, they said there was going to be breakfast sandwiches. So they went and kind of like, while we were on the loop, went and kind of complained. And then we had them the next loop. I was so looking forward to that breakfast sandwich.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing. For me, that was the first time running through the night. Like you're just kind of going through the motions all night long and just doing my thing. And then the sun came up and I turned to JT. I'm like, is that the sun in the clouds? He's like, yeah. And like immediately my brain just went like, oh, now I feel good. I'm awake. It was amazing how that seeing daylight. Do you kind of have the same kind of feelings with that, or you're just locked in?
Yeah. I mean, once you start seeing the sun come back up, it's like, holy cow, I just ran through the entire night. Like, what just happened? Like, there are people who went to sleep, are still sleeping, and I just ran through the whole night, and now I'm watching the sunrise. It's kind of crazy.
Did you notice the course was a bit long?
I think it's like 4.2, right?
It's supposed to be 4.2. I know when we hit the 4 mile, where it's at the 4 mile marker, my watch would be like spot on 4 miles every single time, like within a 10th. And from there to the end of the race was about a half a mile.
Oh, really?
So I think we actually got, I mean, by my calculations, we got 6 extra miles. So
yeah, I didn't even realize I sort of just zone out and don't pay attention to the watch. I pretty much use the watch in that race to check the time, how much time I had, because I'm on such a system, very robotic, you know.
Yep. Yeah, that's the way it seems from my vantage point.
Yeah.
Where I saw, other racers, even, Ed and Jason Giroux, and like I could see spots where they were kind of going better, going worse, up and down, and you seem to just be consistent.
Yeah. The one thing about the Backyard Ultra is if you're still in the race, you're in first place. It doesn't matter if you're in the lead or at the back end. If you're in the race, then you still have a chance at winning the race. Once you time out or drop out, that's, when you're done. So it really doesn't matter how fast you run at all at this race. So it's very interesting concept, the format of the race, where normally in a race, the fastest person wins, but it's not necessarily the case with a Backyard Ultra. It's more of just a test of mental toughness. Who could keep, running around the hamster wheel the longest.
Yeah, during the day, how talkative people are. Everybody's talking, and then as you start to get to night and it starts winding down, people are alone in their thoughts.
Yeah. Gets a little bit, more serious. You're realizing where you're at and how your body's feeling. It's not, feeling good like it was in the morning.
There was a lap where my parents and aunt and uncle were at the stop, and I just couldn't find it in me to talk to them at all. Like I felt rude. Like I wanted to kind of like, because the previous lap, I was just telling them about the race and things are going on, and it was a nice little distraction. Then that next lap is just like, I can't find the words to say anything to you. And
Yeah.
I was back out of it the next loop, and they were gone. But it's just funny how you go through those ups and downs, and you just knowing that there's another side to this.
Yeah, I've had races where I've gone through a really dark patch for like 4 hours, and then I'll just feel really good. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, you know, I'm struggling through a 4 hour section, and then the next 4 hour section, I feel really good. I'm doing great, and I'm actually able to run faster than I was that previous 4 hours I was struggling. And
You weren't running ahead of me when the deer crossed the trail, were you? I
no.
don't. There was so JT and I were running, and there was a guy. It was late at night, probably like 15 feet in front of us, and a deer came shooting down off the hill so fast across the trail, probably 5 feet in front of him. And I was,
Wow.
if a couple seconds later, and he's completely taken out. That was, and then, I'm looking at it like, oh no, where's mom and dad? It was a small deer, but usually there's more coming. I was
Yeah.
really worried, like, is something else going to come out of the trail?
Yeah.
And then the guy, I don't know if you came across the guy filming,
Yeah.
the
I did. Yeah.
videotaping at night. And I remember
Yep.
I'm running, and there's this red light coming towards me. Like,
Oh
what
no.
is this red light? Like, there shouldn't be something running towards me. What is this?
Yeah.
In your brain, my brain is a little off. Like, what's happening here? Am I
Oh
seeing
yeah.
things? Yeah. Anything interesting happened during the race that?
I saw the porcupine on one of the
Yep.
loops,
Yep.
and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was a skunk or if it was a cat. I was like, I didn't know what it was, and then I looked over at Ed over my shoulder, and I was like, "What is that?" And he was like, "It's porcupine." It's like, oh.
One of my favorite moments of the race, JT goes, he yells back to the people behind him to tell them that the porcupine's right there. And he goes, I don't want him shooting quills at anybody. I'm like, they don't. I didn't tell him, but I told him afterwards that they don't shoot quills, and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
still thinks they do. But
It's funny.
all right, so you end that race, and you've got. I want to know a little bit about Moab. So you already knew about this going in. This is a training run for you, basically.
Yep.
And I mean, you're doing a huge jump. I mean, you're going from 103, what is your longest so far?
103.
To 240.
Yep.
You're going from running in perfect weather, nice New England weather, to the Moab desert.
Yeah.
How do you make that jump?
I don't know. We're gonna find out. I mean, I know it's gonna be really hot at some points in the race, and I know at night it could get pretty cold. One of the disclaimers that they have in the runner's manual for that race is that it's been as high as 90 degrees and as low as 6 degrees in this race in the past. So you need to be prepared for the elements. And I've been checking the weather like every day for the race. It looks like it'll be between 80s and 50s right now, but obviously that could change, but
Do you have
yeah,
I assume you have somebody crewing you at least coming along,
yeah,
because you're not
Nick,
obviously carrying all your stuff.
yeah, one of my buddies from college, who lives out in LA, he's meeting up with my buddy Nick, who is at Last Man Standing with me, and they're driving from California out to Moab, and then we're gonna link up in Moab, and they're gonna crew for me at the race. So just 2 people on the crew, but there are a lot of aid stations, and from what I understand, and from the people I've talked to who have done Moab, and what the race director has said, they take very good care of you there. They do everything they can to make sure the people who sign up for that race can get to the finish line.
I was just going to ask you, is there some kind of, like, you almost have to apply to be able to run it? Like, give them a resume almost of your runs, or?
You have to submit or just sign up for the lottery, and there's a lottery, and they just pick random names out of a hat. And I was selected back in January of this year. But then there's a wait list, and a lot of people who get selected will end up dropping out throughout the year. And so if you do end up on the wait list for that race, there's a pretty good chance you'll get in.
And what are your biggest fears kind of going into it? I can't comprehend what that jump was. I mean, that logistically, just the things that, where are you with this whole thing?
I really, I'm going into this with sort of the goal of just finishing it. We'll see what happens. I really have no idea what's going to happen there, how I'll feel. There's going to be a little bit of altitude there, so I might struggle with the altitude a little bit. I know I'll struggle with the heat. But kind of what I've been telling myself is, I've done 100 miles before, and, I just did 100 miles last month, and I got to 100 and felt really good. So, let's do the first 100 miles at Moab, just like the one I did last month. And, and then after that, got 140 more miles to go, and we'll see if I could grind that out.
Just 140 more.
Yeah, that's it.
That's awesome, man. I think that's so cool that you're even attempting that.
Yeah. It's scary. I'm hoping I don't come across any animals at night. That's probably my biggest fear for the race. Coming across a mama bear with her cubs, or like a cougar, but
put eyes in the back of your hat.
Yeah,
I've seen that on, I think, Naked and Afraid or something like that, where because if you're looking at them, they won't attack you, the cougars. But I don't know. It's crazy that you're doing that. I think it's so cool, though. I mean, just ultra running in general, what has it taught you? What do you think? Where do you think your limits are? What have you learned from this 2-year, 3-year journey that you've been on?
I've learned that I'm capable of a lot more than you think you really are capable of. I remember back when I started running, I was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks into running back in November of 2019. And I watched this video on YouTube that just came up because I was watching running videos on YouTube trying to learn a little bit. And I watched this video about some guy who runs Leadville 100. It's called Heavy as Lead, I think. And he used to weigh 300 pounds, and he lost like 100 pounds and went out and ran the race. And I'm watching the video and I'm going, holy cow, there are people that do this. These people are crazy. And I told my mom about the video I watched after, and I was like, I don't think I could ever do anything like this. Like, maybe I could get to 30 or 40 miles one day, but how do you run for a whole day without sleep? Like, how do you do that? That's crazy. And, now it's like, now I'm doing that for fun, and I don't know.
Go ahead.
I just really have no idea what I'm capable of. And, if I finish Moab next week, that's going to be incredible. I have no idea what my limitations even are. If I can finish that race, it's 240 miles. It's a long way.
I mean, once you've done the impossible, I thought an Ironman was impossible. Then I thought, 50 miles, 75 miles, 100 I haven't got to, but I know that's completely possible.
Yeah.
It's once you've done the impossible, well, what's possible?
Yeah.
And it's on to the next thing. It's
yeah.
Wow. Do you go through any kind of well, have you know you've been doing so many races back to back? I was gonna say, do you have any like notice any race hangover?
There are some times after a race where my head is foggy for a couple weeks, but I think that's a little bit with what you're physically beating down your body in the race, and then it's also mentally exhausting, pushing yourself mentally in the race. You're just draining your brain of serotonin, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've been in a funk for a few weeks after races before. Just been really tired and struggling with my runs, but I always come out of it and I'm doing good again.
Are you in a funk after the Cowboys beat the Giants?
Yeah. The Giants won today though, so.
And I'm also a Yankees fan, even though I don't really follow baseball, to be honest with you. I used to, but kind of cool though. 62 Aaron
60,
Judge
61 right now. Hopefully 62. He's got 4 games left to do it, so be great if he did.
The real record, right?
Yeah.
He's an impressive guy. Yeah. Anything else you do besides run? Like, what do you do for what do you do for fun? What are your interests besides that?
I watch a lot of sports. Football and baseball and hockey. I was just at the Yankee game on Friday with my sister. I've started playing in a dodgeball league, so I'm playing dodgeball now, which is kind of a strange sport to play when you're, not in high school anymore.
Right.
It's more of a gym class thing, but it's been a lot of fun playing dodgeball.
I used to play in it wasn't a league, but more like a pickup basketball thing on weekends.
Yeah.
And one weekend we went to the gym and nobody had a basketball, but they had the door was open to the closet and they had the dodgeball balls. So we just played 2 hours of dodgeball. My arm for a week, I couldn't pick up my arm. My shoulder has never been so dead in my life. Throwing those lighter balls.
Yeah. Some of the guys on my team complain about their arms after every game. I don't know. I sort of have like a rubber arm. It never seems to bother me. I don't know.
Yeah, I know for myself, like I think about last winter we had a big storm. We had like 2 feet of snow, and I've got like a 600-foot driveway, right? And my plow died. The transmission went on my plow. I'm like, okay, got to shovel it. And I ended up, a nice person came by, saw me shoveling my driveway and plowed it out for me. But I think part of doing these ultras and pushing my body like I have is like, I got this. You know what I mean? Like I know how to do something for a long period of time. And I know my body can handle it. I mean, and I feel I don't think I walk around like I'm some kind of badass, but on the inside, it's like, it's such a cool feeling. Like you said, running 100, like every time it doesn't get old. It's like, wow, I did that. I don't know. It's kind of nice having your body at an elite level. You're walking around. I mean, you look like a pretty good athlete.
Yeah.
But I would say most people don't know what a badass you are.
Yeah.
And I'm pumped I was pumped that I came in, 6th place behind you, or you were in 5th. And then it occurred to me kind of like leading up to this, looking at your races, I'm like, damn it, he just did this as a training run. But still, I mean, it's cool to toe the line. And, I look forward to running against you next year.
Oh yeah. We're going to have a lot of fun next year.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're up for it, but I'd love to know how Moab goes. I mean, because I think you're gonna. I've talked about JT and this a lot of times when we toe the line for these longer runs and start pushing our distance. Like, you come out a different person than you were going in. Like it.
Oh yeah.
It pushes you in ways you weren't expecting. There's going to be, a lot of adapting on the fly, I'm guessing, in that race. you know, what to wear, what not to wear, what to eat, when to eat, what to carry with you.
Yep.
And so many places where things can go wrong too.
Oh yeah.
How many pairs of shoes do you pack for a race like that?
I have 2 pairs of shoes for the race. And hopefully I don't go through them both. We'll see, but I'm anticipating both shoes will be pretty close to being retired after the race. Probably get 120 on one pair and 120 on the other. But yeah,
That's great.
We'll see.
Well,
Yeah.
Chase, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was good linking up again.
I agree. Well, have yourself a good night, and
yeah, you too.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
Perfect. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Is there a way to track it?
Yes, I will send you the link to track it.
Awesome.
It's on the website for the race, and then
Yeah.
they have a live stream of the finish line. Every time a runner is approximately 30 minutes from the finish line, they'll start live streaming at the finish.
And you're going to be running with, once again, back with the pros.
Yeah.
That's pretty freaking cool. Do you know if, like, do you know of anybody that's running that like to me, like Courtney Dauwalter's like the coolest runner ever. Like,
yeah, she's amazing. I look up to her. She is an incredible person. Really nice, she seems like.
Do you know if she's running it?
I don't think she's running in it this year. I've seen some names that I've recognized before, of some professionals, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. But if you go on Ultra Sign Up, you could look at the entrance and see who's in it.
Did you know Nick Bear was signed up for Last Man Standing? Do you know who
Yeah.
Nick Bear is?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping he'd show up.
I was hoping he would show up. I thought it would have been cool to meet him. I think he had Courtney on his podcast last year, and
yes,
he specifically talked about running this race.
I was watching because I'm a big Courtney fan, and I kind of follow Nick. I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan, but I'm aware of him and follow him here and there. And the Courtney thing came up, and I watched it like the next day. I'm like, and that's actually the day I contacted JT, because JT he's not a fan of Nick Bear at all. And I'm like, Nick just signed up for the last, and we've been talking about Last Man Standing, but we hadn't signed up yet. I'm like, Nick just signed up. He's like, I just signed up. And I signed up right after.
Cool.
But yeah, he didn't show up. I kept sending him emails, talking trash. You gonna show up? You gonna show up? We're scared.
Yeah, I wonder what happened there.
I know he had a baby not long before.
Oh, okay.
So I think that kind of messed up his plans.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Good luck in Moab.
Thank you.
I can't wait to track you and hear about how it went.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, no problem. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.